You fell for that? That thumbnail is so clickbait, it isn't even funny. Hey, it's Tango Oscar Mike, but the title isn't. This is the video that I didn't think I'd be making. And the reason for that is I bought a 705. Now, as many of you know, I like to hike and do POTA activations in the woods. And I have a couple of other radios. I have a KX2, which was, well, let's go back to the beginning. The first QRP radio I had was the Yaesu FT817. And if you know me, I love QRP. I don't own a 100-watt radio. I have. In fact, just recently I borrowed one from my club and was using a 100-watt radio for a special event we were doing. But after that event, I disconnected it and set it on the shelf. I enjoy QRP and I don't see a need for a 100-watt radio. At least for me, I don't have a problem with people running 100-watt radios or even more power. For me, it's about the antenna and your location, that type of thing. And I'm not in a rush, so I enjoy the, not struggle, but I enjoy the challenge of doing QRP. So my TX-500, which I loved, I got that radio. When that radio first came out, I waited. I didn't buy it right away because it didn't have some of the features that I was interested in a radio, and one of them being the voice recorder. So you can record your message so you don't have to keep calling CQ over and over again. And there was a couple of other features, and when they added the SWR graph onto that radio, I was sold and I bought it, and I got the radio, absolutely loved it, was thinking that Lab599 was going to be a big player in the radio market going forward in the future. But unfortunately the war broke out. And it just so happens that during that time, something happened to my radio. I'm sure it was something I did, whether it was high SWR on my antenna, but my antenna is actually pretty good. I had it connected. Maybe we had a storm overnight. Maybe there was static or lightning or something. We did have a windstorm. We didn't have thunder and lightning, but we did have a windstorm. And I was wondering if maybe I got static built up on my antenna. But I've got lightning arresters on my antenna. And my coax is buried under the ground, which I was told is, you know, even more protection. So I'm not really sure, but something happened to the radio, and it was sent for repairs. And that was the beginning of May, and the radio is still there. There's a gentleman out in Reno, Nevada, doing the repairs for the TX-500, and he had trouble getting parts and everything else. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I'm still waiting, and I still hope to get that radio back. But in the meantime, I still have my KX2. And the KX2 is a great tiny radio. As far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much the lightest radio you can get if you compare it to other radios on the market like the FT817, which is 5-watt. The sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Some of the Zygoos and everything else, and even comparing it to the 705, it's just the best, in my opinion, for sideband HF, the best portable radio that you can get. That being said, I don't enjoy using this radio as much as I do other radios. It's super light, the battery's built in, you don't need anything else but the microphone and the antenna and you're good to go. But all the buttons have multiple functions. If you want to enter a frequency, you're hitting a bunch of different buttons and knobs, actually a combination of buttons and knobs on this. Putting the side rails on it and the cover for it make it even better, in my opinion. I also have a custom 3D printed knob on it, and you get 10 watts out of this off the internal battery, so you don't need an external battery or anything else. So it's a great radio. The receive and the filters are really good, and you know, it's not a radio that I'll probably ever get rid of. But that being said, I really enjoyed using the TX-500 and the menu system on the TX-500 more. The TX-500 has a spectrograph, and I don't think it's just a spectrograph, which is nice to have, but it's just the way the menus are and how fast you can change frequencies. On this, if you want to move up and down the bands, you have to spin the dial, and the encoders on this aren't really meant for fast spinning. You start spinning fast and the encoder will miss. And that's a common issue. And somebody said, well, you can replace the encoder on it. And other people said, well, it's not that. It's just that encoder just isn't designed for really fast spinning. The TX500 has a great encoder, and it's a speed-sensitive encoder. So the faster you spin it, the faster it moves up and down the band. And you can literally power through the whole band. This, you can't do that, so you have to enter the frequency manually if you want to jump to another area of the band. And to do that, you press and hold the, what is it here? The rate button, and then you have to press, as you know, a combination of buttons and knobs that press in to get to the frequency you want. And when you're moving around and you're hunting and searching, it's just not the easiest to do, and that's my one flaw with this. I wish it had a better encoder and made it easier to move up and down the band. So incremental. So if you're spinning the encoder faster, it would move through the band faster. But that's really probably one of the only complaints of this radio. Other than that, I think it's pretty good. If you could move through the band with the dial pretty quickly, the entering the frequency manually wouldn't even bother me. But because you have to do that, it does. It's just one of the things about the radio. But other than that, I mean, the radio works well. It has a couple little quirks on it, but no major like flaws or anything like that. You do have to take the battery out of the radio to charge it, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's not bad. You get used to it after you do the time, but I'm always conscious of doing that, and being careful of the wires inside it, because the speaker is attached to the cover, everything. The back facing speaker, if I'm out in the woods and I set this down on the ground or on my pack, I have to make sure it's propped up in a way where the speaker isn't being covered, or wear headphones or something like that, which using headphones when I'm doing POTAs and I'm shooting video isn't good, because then you can't hear. I mean, I could carry an extra audio recorder, and but it's just a pain. But other than that, it's a great radio. Just a couple little things there and there. The TX500, on the other hand, the speaker's built into the microphone. It has fast spinning through the bands. It's super easy to change bands, and it was just a pleasure to use. And now that the war's going on and there's all the sanctions against Russia, the company I work for, we have 2 offices in Russia, 2 large offices. I worked in the computer industry. I'm an IT person, but my company sells software, and we've closed those offices. We had to close those offices. We're not allowed to do any business in Russia. We pretty much abandoned the offices and all the equipment, the thousands of dollars of network equipment that's in that office. We had to abandon it and get out of Russia. We also have had an office in the Ukraine, and that office is gone as well. So there's just no business going on with Russia. And for Lab599, it's a shame, because I really thought that they were going to be such a great company. But a company's only as good, or a product, in my opinion, is only as good as the support you can get for that product. And when I decided that I was, waiting for the Lab599, and just decided that I wanted to get another radio that had a little bit more features and other stuff, I started looking around for other radios, and there really just aren't any other really good options. The Zygoos are great radios. They're cheap radios. I've never owned one. I don't know what the support for those radios are like, but watching some of the reviews of people doing reviews on the radios, they're kind of quirky, and to me it kind of reminded me of the KX2, where if you want to do something, you have to go into multiple menus, and it takes a little bit of work to get really good with that radio. And I know the 6100 in the beginning had a lot of little firmware issues that they were able to resolve, but when I was looking at it, I decided on the Icom. One, because Icom's pretty much the largest ham radio company in the world right now. Yaesu's big, but Yaesu really doesn't have anything. They still have the FT818, the newer model of the 817. That's a 30-year-old radio, and it is a great radio. And I've seen a lot of people buying those radios again. I had one, and I enjoyed using that radio, but Julian OH8 STN did a video on comparing the 817 or 818 and the 705, and all the add-ons that you would have to put into the 818 to make it as compatible or comparable. The filters, putting in a filter, and you can only have one filter at a time in the 818. When I had my 817, I had filters for it. So I had the single sideband filter and I had the CW filter. And if I wanted to do CW, I had to take the single sideband filter out and put in the other filter. So you couldn't have filters for both, and you couldn't adjust the filter. It was a set filter. And it was just to narrow the bandwidth. It wasn't noise reduction or any of that on that radio. But it's a fun field radio, don't get me wrong. It's just not a great radio for contesting or when the bands are really full, because you're going to hear all the bleed in from the frequencies around you. But other than that, it was a great radio. I used it for Winter Field Day and some other events sometimes, and it was really hard using that radios during those events. All those radios that I've mentioned so far, the KX2, the TX-500, and the 817, if you want to do digital modes on those radios, you have to have a separate device, whether it be a signal link, a digi-rig, or a USB sound card and audio cables, and a lot of, lots of wiring, cat control, a separate cat control radio cable for all of those radios as well. And there's a lot to it. With the 817, it's one single USB cable, which is really nice. And that USB cable provides cat control, audio to your computer, and also GPS signal. So that has been really nice. I had my 705 set up for WinLink and FLDigi for NBEMS in a couple of minutes. No hassle, super easy to do, very, very happy. But those are the things that I considered when I was looking for a new radio. Of course, the cost of the 705 is high. If you look at the TX-500, I bought it, I think it was $900, and it's $1,300 now if you can buy one. I think Ham Radio Outlet still has them. And I still think it's a great radio. I just wish there was better support. And, with the war in Russia, I don't think things with Russia are going to go back to normal for a very long time. What that means for Lab599 in the long term, I don't know. I don't think another company in another country could even buy them, because they're not allowed to do business in Russia. I mean, we're literally allowed to do no business in Russia at all. So knowing that, I just don't think there's anything that I could, it's a shame, because I really think that radio is phenomenal. The design, it's something so brand new to the market. But again, something happened to mine, and I'm still waiting for it to be repaired, and I don't know when I'm going to get it back. So, but let's talk about some other stuff. I did write down some notes because I wanted to talk about weights, and the KX2 you can't beat for the weight. It's super light compared to the other radios. Total weight on the KX2 is 1.12 pounds. That's with the internal battery and the microphone, and that gives you 10 watts of power. That's not 10 watts for a long time, but it is 10 watts of power. The TX-500 doesn't have a battery with it, so you have to take a battery. And if I take, for example, my 3 amp hour Bioenno battery, that takes the weight up to 2.6 pounds for the TX-500 with the speaker mic and the radio and the battery. So, you know, that's almost twice the weight. Not quite, but close. But that gives you 10 watts as well. The FT817, I don't have one anymore to compare the weights for that. I can't remember what the weights on it were. It has an internal battery. The radio only does 6 watts now with the 818, but it only does 6 watts. The battery that comes with it isn't great. When I had mine, I upgraded to the Wincamped lithium battery. But it's a good radio, but it is heavy. I did find some information on it, and it is still lighter than the 705. The 705 with the battery and the microphone is 2 pounds, 13 ounces. If I add my external Bioenno battery, then it comes to 3 pounds and 11 ounces. And the reason you would do that is the radio is only 5 watts on the internal battery. You get 10 watts with an external battery. So if I wanted to use the external battery to get 10 watts, that's the added weight. But in general, it's still, 2 pounds, 13 ounces. But if you look at the TX-500 and taking an external battery with it to power that radio, my 3 amp hour battery, this is only 7 ounces heavier than the TX-500 with an external battery. So that adds up. All that weight really makes a difference when you look at it in that perspective. I know people are putting, the POV cage around this. That's another 12 ounces to put the cage around it to protect the radio a little bit. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think the radio is particularly delicate. I guess it remains to be seen. I don't think this radio is delicate, but I did put the rails and stuff on the KX2, which does make it a little heavier, and that's why. But even with the rails and the cover on this, with the microphone, it's still only 1.1 pound, 12 ounces. So it's still really hard to beat, and I really think this makes a rugged option. And if you have a KX2, to me, it should come this way. I just really think it should. It just makes it so much nicer. Cons with this. The one thing, this does have UHF and VHF on it, which is great, but it only has one antenna jack, unlike the 817, which has 2. So if you want to switch, you have to change antennas. And that option is really nice, having the rear and front facing antenna mount on the 818 is nice. I did like that feature. I kind of wish this did have another antenna mount, but I know why they did it. And usually you're not switching around that often back and forth, but it would be nice. The form factor of the radio, I think, is good. I do wish it had some type of fold-out little foot built in, so you didn't have to worry about getting it aftermarket or something to hold it upright. The form factor, the square form factor, I think is actually better than the 817, the long flat form factor. Especially if you're looking at putting it in a Pelican type case. It's a lot easier to fit it in the case like that, as being a square brick instead of being a long, object. So that makes a difference. Being able to do digital modes with just one USB cable, I think I mentioned that. But I've had the radio less than a week, and I'm I am thrilled with it. I'm really excited about it. I've been making a lot of contacts on it, chasing parks on the air, doing local nets, doing WinLink and other stuff just to try the radio out. And it took me about an hour to get familiar with the radios. The touchscreen and the menus are really intuitive. I was able to find pretty much everything I needed to do. And it's great. The only issue that I will have is I do plan on taking this to parks and hiking with it. I know it's a little bit heavier and it adds a little bit of weight, but it's not too much weight. And a lot of times I'm really not carrying a lot of other stuff. A friend did recommend a case for this. It's a padded lens case, I believe, which I may look into. Right now I have an Apache case from Harbor Freight set up. I had an Apache case for the KX2 as well. I had the Apache 3800 case, which is the larger case, which you would think I would have a smaller case for this, but I had the larger case and I had my stuff in it. But I also had the battery charger for this, which is external and plugs into the wall, because if we go on a trip, I need to take that battery charger with me to charge the radio. So that took up a little space, a little more space, and it just took up more space than I had originally intended. And the smaller 2800 case I had just didn't work. So I bought a 3800 case and put the radio in that. Now this is, hope you can see that on camera. Let me see. Okay, so this is an Apache 2800 case. I think the comparable Pelican case is a 1400, which runs for about, I think, $110. You may find it cheaper, but I think that's what the general cost is, and it's almost exactly the same internal dimensions. The case has two large center layers of foam. At least this one had two large layers of foam in the middle. There's foam in the bottom and foam in the lid. But if I take all the foam, the two center layers of foam out, the 705 fits in here very nicely. One thing you may notice on the case is how nice it looks. The color looks a little darker than you see the foam on other things. I had previously used this case for other stuff, so I had to literally take the foam out and put foam in. I used a hot glue gun to glue the foam into place where I wanted it. And then I just sprayed it with a super light coating of Flex Seal. It dries and it hardens the outside of the foam just so it doesn't break apart and flake apart over time, and it really makes the foam a lot more durable. You will see when I put radios in a case like this or something, don't forget that you have to grab the radio out of the case. So I always take a little bit of extra foam out on either side, so it makes it real easy to grab the radio out, and I'm not pushing and spreading the foam apart every time I grab it to take it out. This is a 5x7 Write in the Rain notebook that I have in here that I use for when I have a paper log when I'm in the woods. And as you can see, the area left over from the radio. Now I left, this is actually 3 sections of foam, the tearaway foam blocks. I left 3 in there because it gives it a little bit more support. But you could get a little more space if you took another row of foam out of there. But it's just big enough for this area. This is a little bit bigger. It's probably 5 by, 7.5. But I have everything in here that I need. There's the microphone, 3 amp hour battery, the power cord for the radio, the USB cable, which I technically don't need in here unless I'm going to be doing digital modes, but I threw it in there anyhow. I keep a tent peg in there just in case I need something when I'm in the field. This is just a little nylon bag with coax adapters, a power splitter, some earbuds, just a little stuff. An LNR, this is my LNR trail-friendly antenna. It fits in there on the small winders. The larger winders I have from Soda Beams do not fit in here. You can kind of cram them in here, but they really don't fit and take up a lot of space. I have a little tiny piece of paracord here, a pencil, and my RG174 coax, which I've had for quite a while and it's still going strong. This whole setup altogether weighs, with the case and everything, is 9 pounds 2 ounces. To me, this is a great travel case. Anytime we take a road trip, I would take the KX2 in the larger case and you know, go with it. And this will be my new travel radio. Like I said, it's heavier. I'm not going to argue that. It feels like a brick. But the fact that you can charge it off a 12 volt or USB is really nice. That way I can charge it in the car, or I can charge it in a hotel, and I'm not taking another external, you know, 120 volt power brick to charge up the battery like on the KX2 or on other radios. So this will be my new travel radio. Coincidentally, this smaller case fits into the backpack I have right now for hiking. The case by itself, I think, is 4 pounds. That's a heavy case. Let me just double check that. Yeah, the case by itself is 4 pounds. Even with some of the foam cut out the way I have it, is just over 4 pounds. And that's a lot of weight just for a protective case. So I probably will look for something else. Like I said, a friend told me about, I think it's called a jelly roll on Amazon. It's a padded lens case. He has it, puts his 705 in here and says it fits perfect. But some of the features of the 705 that I really didn't know about or really weren't specified in the reviews that makes it pretty interesting to me. There's a couple of small features. To me, they make a big difference. One of the features that I really like about this is you can... Tractor going up the hill. This sounds like a tractor, I don't know. One of the features I really liked about the 705, it does have a feature, and people have done videos on it, where you can search for repeaters near you based on the GPS, and it will show you the repeaters, but that's only for D-Star repeaters. So I was kind of disappointed that the file that you upload didn't have all repeaters for the US in there. That was a little disappointing to me. But you can go out to Repeater Book. If you create an account and log in, you can search for repeaters within a 50-mile radius of you. Or if you're traveling somewhere, you can say, I'm going to this city, I want to see all repeaters within, you know, 10, 20 miles, whatever distance you want. And then you can export that into a file format that the 705 programming software can read. So I literally... This hawk is out here all the time. I don't know if he's mating, if it's mating season or what, but he's out here screeching all the time. But anyhow, you can upload all the repeaters into the radio, into the memory banks. And on other radios, on other 2-meter radios, when you create memory banks and put in repeaters, you may put in a name with it. And most radios only display the name that you put in, which is usually 6 characters, but it doesn't show the frequency. With this, it shows the frequency on the screen, and it shows the name, and it actually is a very long name. I didn't look to see how many characters it actually allows, but usually it's enough to have the call sign of the repeater and the location. Like, I live in Washington County, so my repeaters are the K3 PSP repeaters, and it will say K3 PSP Washington. So there's enough room to put that much information in there, and it's really nice once you have, you know, a few hundred repeaters programmed in there, and you know, you're in another area and somebody says, hey, can you get on the Allegheny County repeater? You can pull it up and kind of spin through all the memories and find the one from Allegheny County. You don't have to know the call sign or the frequency. You can just find the location that way. And that's kind of nice. I wish there was a way you could get the GPS data or location for all those repeaters without doing it manually. Put it in so you can say, hey, show me all the repeaters near me that are just standard FM repeaters, and have it find that repeater. There is also, it's not available to everyone yet. Repeater Book, the Repeater Book app has a way to connect to the 705 through Bluetooth. You can pull up, you can search for a repeater on the app, click on that repeater, and it will actually change the frequency and program the radio for that repeater on the radio, which is nice, but you have to have your phone and Bluetooth going at the same time. But I think that's kind of a cool feature. I would rather just see everything uploaded to the radio and be able to just do it that way. But yeah, that to me is a cool feature. Like I said, so far, like I said, I've had it less than a week. I know people have had it for a long time, since the radio came out, and when you hold it, it does feel a lot heavier than any radio that I have. Not quite as heavy as like an 857, but I do like the features that this radio has. The touchscreen's really nice. I like the option to power it via USB or 12 volts. If you do power it through USB, you still only get 5 watts output. You have to power it with 12 volts to get 10 watts. That's something that I didn't know. I thought with USB you could get 10 watts out of it, but you can't. And this is micro USB. It's not USB-C. If it was USB-C, you can provide more power over USB-C, and maybe if that feature was, maybe if the radio had that built in, you would be able to get 10 watts, but you can't. So over USB, powering it over USB, you can't get that. When I first got the radio, I put the battery in, and I thought the battery was dead because I got nothing. I plugged in the USB cable and was powering the radio off of USB, and then realized that I had the battery on, but I didn't click it down quite hard enough, and it wasn't in there the whole way. So I think what I did is I kind of did that. Here it click. So I didn't quite push it in the whole way, and the battery wasn't dead, but I still was able to power the radio through USB. So I think that's all I have for now. I am taking a trip shortly with my wife. We're going to go hike a national park and go to, there's a state park in the same area we're going to. We're taking Augie with us again. He's going with us, and we're going to do a lot of hiking and have some fun. And since I got the radio, if I don't do a POTA when we're done hiking, my wife probably will kick my butt. But I won't be hiking with the radio. We'll do the POTA, and then we'll do the hike, and then I'll probably come back to the truck and just try to activate a POTA from the truck real quick. I actually also thought about mounting this in my truck some way, so I could use the repeater functions that are on here, because I really do like all the repeaters that you can add on here. And this radio does scan really fast. So the memory banks have 100 locations in it. And the one I have, I think, has 96 or 97 programs in it. And you can scan through all of those pretty quick, within a second or two. So I really like that it has that fast scan. Some radios don't have that fast a scan for 2-meter repeaters. It takes a bit longer to do. And so I actually thought about putting this in the truck for the trip. Maybe, I know Lido makes a seat bolt mount that comes up and can hold the radio. I mean, I'm not going to take the 2-meter rig I have out of my truck, but having this as well might be pretty cool. But I don't think I'm going to bother with that. But yeah, it's been great so far. Really don't have any complaints. I have a roll-up J-pole. I didn't put an external. I haven't bought a little whip antenna to put on this yet, like a signal stick or something like that. I know if you use one of those, you have to use a counterpoise. Otherwise, you get really bad SWR. The radio does have an SWR graph built into it, kind of like the TX-500. The TX-500's a little bit easier to use, I think. It's really a really nice graph. This one, you have to tune to that frequency and key the mic a few times. It's really not difficult to use, and it seems to work really well. It gives you the same information, so I'm just happy that it's there. In fact, I have an antenna analyzer, the AA30 from Rig Expert, but it doesn't do 2 meters. So I've actually been able to check my 2-meter antennas, including the roll-up J-pole I have for this, for 2 meters. And those roll-up J-poles, if you're looking for a portable radio, a portable antenna for 2 meters, you can't beat one of those roll-up J-poles. So I am excited about the future with this radio, and I'm probably going to use it more than I think. The filters on the radio compared to other radios, like the noise reduction compared to the KX2, sounds so much better. I don't know what it is, but it just sounds so much better, even when using headphones. The one thing though I did discover, I have a Heil, can't remember the headset. I'll put the headset list here somewhere, what I have. I recorded the voice recordings using my headset, and they sounded kind of muffled. And then I recorded using the microphone that comes with the 705, and the audio from this was so much clearer than my Heil headset. So I think maybe using this and a pair of earbuds is a better option than my Heil headset. The Heil headset, of course, doesn't fold up. It doesn't fit in this case. But the audio just seems so much better with the microphone than it does the headset. And I tried changing a few settings, and it really didn't make that much of a difference on the headset. But the microphone seems great. Also, I've had the KX2 has buttons where you can change the frequency on it with the buttons here. The problem with the KX2 is sometimes when you key the push to talk, it will change the frequency on the radio if you have those buttons enabled. So on my KX2, I have those buttons disabled. But on this radio, you can really tune through the band really fast with the buttons on the microphone. I'm using that more than I ever thought I would. It really lets you zip around the band pretty easily without touching the radio. So that's a feature that I don't think anybody else has really talked about, that is really good. You know, so that's another thing to consider. Heil does have a headset adapter. Really, it's just for the microphone. It's just a little split out. So you plug that into the radio. It gives you a microphone jack for the microphone on your headset, and it gives you a push to talk button that's wired into the adapter. But it's only this long, so you still have to have that push to talk right next to the radio. You have to be able to reach that push to talk on the radio to push it to use a headset. I think it would be better if that still was a PTT jack, so you could plug in a foot pedal or, you know, some other switch that wasn't right next to the radio. But I bought the adapter when I bought the radio in all intentions of using my Heil headset more often with that radio, because I do use that headset with other radios. But I kind of like the speaker mic. One thing nice about the headset is you can hear stations. If you're out somewhere and don't want to turn the radio up, you know, you can hear better with the headset. You could use earbuds with this, or since this is a speaker mic, you can always hold it up to your ear too to hear better. And the audio quality out of this and the radio itself, because it's a front-facing speaker, is great. Yeah. So that's all I have. Sorry I clickbaited you with that thumbnail. But the title was what I intended. I honestly didn't expect to ever be buying this radio. I've looked at it before. In fact, I looked at it when I was in Dayton, and in Dayton I actually got in line to buy one, stood in line for about 5 minutes, and then said, I don't want that radio, it's too big, and I left and never bought it. But coming home and waiting for my TX-500 to come back, Country life, man. Getting frustrated over not having my TX-500 back, I decided that I wanted to buy another QRP radio that had more features and better support. And it's hard to argue with the 705 in that aspect. So I definitely think this is better for somebody who does drive-up POTAs or other QRP activities where they're not hiking into the woods and carrying a lot of gear. I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend this for a soda, but you know, maybe all the features. If you're going up to a soda to do digital modes, it might be a good radio to take, because you don't have to have all the wires and audio interface external like you do on other radios. So, but so far I'm pretty happy with it, and I look forward to using it a lot more. This is Tango Oscar Mike 73. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Tango Oscar Mike